Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this week's Blockchain Gaming News Roundup by blockchaingamer.biz. Today is Friday, the 28th of June. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan, and with me is co-host John Jordan. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Hello. I like your hat. Very nice.
Yes, I like yours. So, new merch, also a new season coming, Summer Surge in Mojo Melee, launching 11th of July.
Yeah, I've got my battle pass ready, raring to go.
Yeah. Go to the Mojo shop marketplace and get your battle pass.
Yeah,
and that also has. Is it mixing this up with another game? Is it how much rewards is it? 250,000.
I think it's 25,000 stable coin, $25,000 in stable coins, and 1 million Mojo. But I could be wrong on the 1 million Mojo. But yeah,
it's a lot of rewards, numbers, and things.
And there's a quite friendly with the Mojo Melee Planet Mojo people, but they got quite a lot of news coming out. So they're sort of like they've finished their sort of first spin through the blockchain gaming world, and they're going to have a few announcements that are going to be sort of the more long-term stuff of what they're going to do. So I think it's quite
a lot has happened actually for the developer this year. Mystic Moose, US-based developer. So they got their obviously auto chess battler Mojo Melee, but then they've also launched this Go Mojo, and then they've also revealed this. They've got this other title, all to bring utility. Obviously, it's
plushies.
Plushies, that's right. And as you say, lots more coming that we can't really talk about yet, but keep your eyes on that. Another season starting soon. Actually, it's the official global launch, although you wonder sort of what's there's been a soft launch since November in beta. The big difference is that so I'm talking about Cillian Whale's Wild Forest, which launched on Ronin earlier this year, and actually it launched its NFTs on Ronin earlier this year, and now those NFTs and some other in-game assets sort of linked to the beta version of the game are going to become useless, and they've launched this sort of Forge shop feature where players can go and burn their old NFTs and turn them into a new resource called Essence, which can then be used to buy new in-game items that will be useful as the launch is approaching now. And this is the 1st of July, but then they said the first week of July, so I'm not exactly sure which date the launch will be. It's also been available only on mobile so far, but that's also going to be launched on PC, so you'll be able to play on both.
Yep.
So exciting times for Ronin, as we were discussing this week with Sky Mavis co-founder Jeff Zirlin. Fired some questions over to him, sort of in the context of this thesis that Web3 gaming is dead. Some sort of Twitter crypto influencers have claimed. I don't actually know how much. So if you're just saying this as a provocative thing, or if they actually believe it, but no numbers point towards that Web3 gaming is dead, even though obviously it's down. But you might then also argue that it has crashed, but it's still there. So that sort of strengthens it and makes the case that it's kind of.
I think it was a little bit like a meme, a counter meme to Web3 gaming is inevitable, which is sort of gets banned around. So I think it was just a sort of more sort of reaction to that.
Yeah. Anyway, Jeff Zirlin certainly does not think that Web3 gaming is dead. He says it's thriving, and it is thanks to Ronin. As he would say that. But
although he did.
I mean, you're looking at Pixels, looking at Axie. Some of the most significant games that are out there are actually on Ronin, so you can sympathise with him. So.
Yeah. I mean, equally, we probably won't go into it so much in this call, but probably more next week. It's the Pixels has just put out its Chapter 2, which is quite a big sort of change of it, and they've actually lost quite a lot of audience. So, at one point they were over 1 million daily active unique wallets. I think they're down to about 400,000. So it's quite a big drop off, and in a sense, I've sort of been someone who's sort of spoken a lot about the sort of rise of Ronin. But even in that sort of situation where it's always sort of cavited around, we don't really know how many bots are in there. And this is, I think, this is something that all blockchain games that get to a certain amount of volume sort of go through this situation where they change their reward system, and then they lose a lot of audience straight away. So Alien Worlds did it, Splinterlands did it, and they make a feature change of how the game works, and then they lose half their audience, and you realise that's because of bots mainly. So, but even if they have 400,000, they're still the biggest blockchain game by a factor of 4. So I mean, it's you sort of I wouldn't disagree with Jeff from that point of view. But the other thing to point out is I do think it is a bit interesting. It is interesting that they are still very keen on supporting Axie, and I do sort of wonder how long that will last. That does seem a little bit increasingly like flogging a dead horse. The game's got 40,000, 50,000 DAUs, whatever, but they are incentivizing it a lot by basically giving away free tokens to anyone who just sort of plays the game a little bit. I can't really see people flocking back to that game. So one of the questions was, why don't you just sort of ignore Axie Infinity and move on to other things, which is slightly provocative. But I do wonder over time. I think it'll be interesting to see whether they can come up with because obviously it's an IP that's sort of known in the space, but quite whether it's a relevant IP with a game that people are sort of really playing, I'm slightly less convinced about.
No, I mean, it really worked in 2021, but then to some extent the industry moves on and players move on, and so maybe game developers might also have to, even though it's probably their sort of their baby, I
mean, I think the hard thing is to think about how you reinvent an IP. So, I mean, not in the blockchain space, but Angry Birds was a very famous mobile game, and it was super successful, and they did all these Star Wars Angry Birds and loads of different versions of Angry Birds. But they had real struggles making it a free-to-play version, and they tried lots of different things of that. But in the end, they got to Angry Birds 2, they called it, and it was a totally different game. It was sort of, a free-to-play version of it, totally different sort of reimagining. But that worked quite well. It wasn't the big hit that Angry Birds was, but it's a pretty successful game. Makes quite a lot of money for them. So I wonder, with Sky Mavis, I think if they were more hard-nosed. And if I was if I had the powers over them, I'd basically say stop all development of what you're doing now and think about, you've got these characters, what game could we use them for? And they're doing a little bit with Axie Homeland, but that's not really captured anyone's imagination. But there is something there. People know what Axies are. People do love their Axies, but they need to be. I mean, it doesn't really matter because they've got these other stuff going on. But I think from that point of view of that game is basically stop development on everything they're doing on Axie. Start with a blank sheet of paper and go, you've got this cool IP, pretend it's from Disney. Disney's Axie Infinity characters.
Well, maybe we don't know. Maybe there are plans. They've got Puffverse. What's it called? Puff Down.
Puffverse.
Is it Puffverse?
Puffverse. Yeah, that has loads of games in it. Yeah, but that's not theirs, is it? That's someone else's.
But I mean, it's on Ronin.
Yeah.
And what the plan might be, to make Axies, so integrate Axies into.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be very blockchain. Basically, there's no Axie game really, but Axies are integrated as interoperable assets in Wild Forest, in Pixels, but so they just live as this sort of meta layer. I mean, that would be quite cool. I think that would But anyway, we've got a bit sidetracked.
Yeah, more on Ronin though. They've also had another game announced coming to their ecosystem this week, which is like a survival MMORPG, Lumiterra, and
it's not really survival. I don't think.
Oh no, okay.
Well, it was sort of. They do use the term survival, but to me, survival sort of crafting MMORPG is sort of like a gritty. You're in the wilds and there's zombies everywhere. This is like a cute, colourful pastel, Japanese developed.
Okay.
So it doesn't
open world exploration MMORPG maybe.
It's quite deep in terms of if you look at. I mean, I've not played it, but looking at the videos, it's got quite deep sort of crafting item system. So it's very sort of I mean, it's a bit Axie actually. It reminds me of a bit sort of, you know, the sort of the characters and stuff have,
No,
you know.
yeah.
So, but the funny thing about that one, as we discussed previously, is last week they announced they were going on Solana. So we're a bit confused because presumably you're not going to operate one on Solana and Ronin. And that's, I mean, you could technically do it, but that'd be a bit bonkers.
Yeah. But it would be
no one's mentioned it, have they?
First games to do that. No one's mentioned any of that. But last week they did announce, and it was a thing on the Twitter and you know, the Solana gaming layer 2 Sonic. When the news around that unveiled last week, they were very happy to go, our flagship title to go live is going to be Lumiterra. So interesting.
It's a bit odd, isn't it?
We do know that games. So sometimes there's sort of a lagging thing there, isn't it? Where, you know, news comes out and then the next week they go, but we're not on that one anymore. We just didn't sort of update the ecosystem or the whatever, PR or whatnot. We have also been talking to Pixels CMO Heidi Christine about the Pixels community, which is, you know, what we would say one of the stronger ones in Web3 gaming at the moment. Partly, like you mentioned many times, one of the strengths of Pixels is this VIP that they've got where people pay it's about $10 a month, which gives them access to this Pixel token. But that's not the only reason people have that VIP. But anyway, that obviously, that's sort of bound to build a strong core of a community. Followers, but then they obviously have a massive community. As I've always talked about, sort of with the recent growth of Pixels, how do you keep your community happy, but equally still having to refine the game and update features that you know that your community might not like, and so you know, how sort of strong point is just do not overpromise, which is certainly a very relevant kind of advice.
I think the other thing it's we mentioned Pixels lots of times and spoken to Luke as well, but I think very much because their philosophy is really, you know, they're very, very open about what they're doing, and it's not. I think a lot of other games sort of are very open in terms of like, look at the artwork our art guy's done, and look at this animation of this skeleton character, and it goes on for years and years. There's never any game; they're always showing you artwork and stuff. But whereas Pixels has always been sort of this scrappy. Well, here's the game, and you know, we're going to update this, and I think every week Heidi and Luke have a AMA. A town hall AMA, and they say you know the two figureheads of the game are there talking to the every week. It's not like once a month and then we forgot to do it sort of thing. You know, they really are very much embedded into that game, and I think that the reason that game did get successful is that it was always about being a sort of an interoperable layer. So they from very early on, if you had like all these other sort of famous NFTs, you could it would read your wallet. I mean, it's still the case now. It basically looks at your wallet and says, what NFTs have you got in that wallet? And then that can be your avatar. So you can have, obviously Mochaverse is very popular there at the moment. And obviously those are not running on the Ronin blockchain, but they basically look at the artwork and then they do a pixel version of that. So they've done, behind the scenes, they've done quite a lot of integration work to have all these, because some people are really into their, whatever it is, their ape or whatever, and they can have a version of that, obviously very pixelated in Pixels. And that was always the idea behind it. It was like a place where all the NFT holders can go and, it's not a hardcore game in any way. It's a, sort of farming resource game, social sort of farming resource game. But it has this sort of, talking about interoperability, it's very open, welcoming and stuff. So I think there are the way that game's been developed and the way the idea behind the game sort of make community to be a more inherent part of it than maybe everyone talks about. Our great community, and what they then say is we've got these amount of people on Discord, which is not, they really have community embedded into their game, in a much deeper way, I think, than most games do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a good interview. She's switched on, bright lady. Shardbound has launched open beta via Epic Games Store yesterday, 27th of June. You've been playing the game a bit, and you have been quite excited about this.
I've not played this open beta, I have to say, yet, but yeah, I've played it previously, and
I see.
Yeah. No, I think it's quite good. I mean, again, like a lot of these games, I'm not quite sure how big an audience it attracts. I think there will be it's sort of deep enough that there'll be sort of a hardcore audience for it. Just for me, I just know I won't be able to have, I just haven't got enough spare time to play that game at a deep level. I might play for a few hours, but it's a turn-based sort of strategy game. It's quite, each game session is, I would think, unless you're losing very quickly, like I sometimes do, is sort of half an hour long. So that's just for one session. So it's sort of quite demanding. I mean, it's not a hardcore game, but it's definitely not a sort of casual game. So I think that they, like a lot of, a bit like trading card games, I suppose. I think there'll be a core audience for it, but I'm not quite sure how big that will be. So we'll wait and see. I mean, they've got their token goes live. Oh no, it's not. That's not their token. Someone else's. So actually, no. So this is just a Web 2 version going live on the Epic Games Store. So the Web 3 stuff on Immutable is not live. I don't think they have anything live yet from. I don't think there's any NFTs or anything live from them. But,
Talking about Immutable and game launches, though, they've got quite a busy sort of next couple of months. We know that Robbie Ferguson has said that I think about 50 games is about to launch in the next couple of months or so on Immutable. Have to wait and see how many that'll be in the end. But MetalCore has launched their next playtest, which is a closed beta, in conjunction with also launching their token. Shrapnel, which is not on Immutable, has started a playtest, STX 3.1, we call it. And more game launches. We have Crypto Unicorns has migrated from Polygon to gaming chain Xi, Arbitrum L3. We have Ubisoft's RPG Champions Tactics, which has announced they're minting their in-game NFTs from 15th of July. And Oasis, which is the blockchain they are minting on and going live on, is running like a campaign where you can win one of those kind of allow list spots to get a NFT. These are like the in-game champions NFTs. Which was there's another one. Another game I was thinking about. Oh yeah, it's Illuvium. They've announced their launch date on the 25th of July. So in terms of sort of Immutable games coming, we got Shardbound, like you say. We have Illuvium coming up. We got MetalCore currently running a closed playtest.
Hunters.
Boomlands Hunters on Chain has had a fairly big week. You looked at the numbers of.
They've had 20,000 wallets.
So they've got their airdrop.
They are 1 week into their month-long airdrop campaign. It seems to be active. They're sort of getting some collabs going on with other games and sort of DAUWs and stuff. So
Well, sort of the big news from Immutable this week was that Netmarble is bringing their Marblex platform blockchain and the games. 3 of the games on there. What will happen to the other Web3 games from Netmarble, I don't know, but it's what's it called? The My City. Sorry, should have looked this up.
My City A3 and the one I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
But
So that's 3 more games coming to. And I mean, what it sort of does is it widens kind of Immutable's reach, I suppose, and gives them sort of a stronghold in South Korea. Oh, that's what they pay for the way.
I mean, it does in a sense. It does it because it's basically Netmarble have just spent the last 2 years trying to build their own platform on Clayton, the South Korean blockchain. It hasn't worked. I mean, nothing because of the blockchain. They've not, from my point of view, they've not done a very particularly good job. They've sort of integrated Web 3 into some Web 2 games, which is quite like we may have done with their WeMix, but at least WeMix were much more active and just chucked loads of games in there. I mean, most of them didn't work, so but Netmarble have have just, I think we can the only way to see this is it's a failure of Netmarble's version 1 strategy. And this is, I've not looked, but I'd be amazed if they have any blockchain activity on those 3 games that they talk about a lot. So, in a sense, this is sort of like a PR window dressing, and I guess we'll see what new games they are doing. But I think in terms of the 3 games they're announcing coming to Immutable, I don't think that will have any impact at all. But you're right; it does sort of go to show, and this is sort of data we've looked at for the reports coming out soon. Is that Immutable is now the biggest blockchain in terms of sort of game titles on there by far. It's a sort of de facto standard. In terms of, they always say 330, or they have these very big numbers. We got about, I can't remember what it is now, about 120, 130.
167, inclinging multi-chain games. Okay. The games that are not exclusively on Immutable, but also.
So we see about half of their number half of the number that they quote. We have publicly announced games that are on that. But in a sense, it doesn't really matter. Ronin has 16 games on it, and it has has more activity on it than
proportionally it's got more live games, doesn't it? So
yeah. So I'm not actually looking at the moment because it's something obviously all these games coming out on Immutable. Immutable's total lifetime wallet count is over 3 million now. I think Ronin's 5 million. No, Pixels on its own is 5 million, so something like that at least.
Ronin's lifetime wallets are 20 million.
Is it 20 million? Okay. But in terms of that doesn't matter. That's a totally irrelevant number. But in terms of daily actives, Immutable has 300,000. So about 10% of all the wallets ever created are active on a daily basis. So obviously for Ronin that number will be much smaller, but partly because loads of those were made for Axie Infinity. So you have to be a little bit careful. But basically you're sort of looking at how many wallets are active. That's people who are, or wallets who are every day doing stuff on your blockchain, and that's really one of the key sort of KPIs.
Yeah, good. So teased it a little bit so far, but the report is going to come out sometime next week. Our second quarter, Q2, 2024. Also looking obviously at the first half of 2024, and the narrative, fairly changing narrative really. It's been very up, and then it's gone really down. So see what we make of that, but that's something we will be sure to discuss next week. So check back in with us then, and thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.